The Samnitici Milites were the heavy infantry version of the Hastati Samnitici. They were extremely well armoured compared to their poorer comrades and looked more akin to a Greek hoplite than a traditional Samnite warrior. However, in every single aspect, these soldiers fought like Samnites, and proved to be extremely deadly in the process. At the time, the Samnites were one of the most formidable and combative people in Italy. However, they were rarely united despite being culturally and linguistically homogeneous. The Samnites were divided into 4 distinct tribes, each with its political structures and leadership. While the tribes did occasionally interact with each other, it was uncommon for them to band together. Usually this only occurred when the Samnites were threatened by a foreign invader, such as the Gauls or the burgeoning power of Rome. Initially, the Samnites were influenced by the Greeks in matters of warfare. However, the mountainous terrain of their homeland made fighting in the Greek style difficult. Greek warfare was centered around tight formations of spearmen, which required open spaces to move. In contrast, the Samnites developed a distinct form of warfare that was more mobile and could navigate around obstacles such as rocks and trees. This led to the Samnites becoming a highly disciplined and mobile force, using looser formations that allowed them to operate both independently and in coordinated groups, similar to the later Roman manipular legions. Despite their fearsome reputation, the Samnite army was only accessible to those who could afford to serve and purchase their equipment. As a result, the Samnite infantry was divided into 2 distinct classes based on wealth. The first was the Hastati Samnitici, who were typically the poorer of the infantry. The second class was composed of wealthier soldiers who could afford better equipment and training, and were known as the Samnitici Milites. Arms and armour. The Samnites were influenced quite heavily by the nearby Greeks. The ancient Greeks were a culture that placed a great emphasis on military power and advancement, which led to them becoming one of the most militarily, technologically advanced cultures of their time. They were pioneers in developing weapons and armour such as the hoplite shield and the Corinthian helmet, which were designed for maximum protection while also allowing for flexibility in battle. Greek warfare also involved the use of tactics and strategy, with generals such as Alexander the Great and his father Philip II revolutionizing the use of the phalanx formation. The military advancements of the Greeks were admired and copied by many of the neighbouring cultures, including the Samnites. The Samnites, being a people who were often at war, saw the advantages of Greek military tactics and weapons and incorporated them into their military strategy. This led to the development of a unique Samnite style of warfare that combined elements of Greek tactics with their own mobile and adaptable formations. However, the adoption of Greek military technology was not without its challenges for the Samnites. Greek equipment was often expensive and only accessible to the wealthy. This meant that only the richer Samnites could afford the full range of equipment and weaponry, leaving the poorer soldiers at a disadvantage. As a result, the Samnite infantry was divided into 2 distinct classes based on wealth, with the poorer Hastati soldiers having access to only basic equipment, while the wealthier Milites had access to the full range of equipment and training. Despite this, the Samnites were able to develop a formidable military force, combining Greek military tactics and their own unique fighting style. The Samnite muscle cuirass was a type of body armour worn by the Samnite soldiers during their military campaigns. The armour was made of bronze and consisted of a breastplate and a backplate, with the front piece having an engraved muscle pattern. It was designed to protect the torso from enemy attacks, particularly arrows and spears, whilst also providing a degree of mobility and comfort for the wearer. The Samnite muscle cuirass was a costly piece of equipment, as it was essentially custom made for each soldier. The armour had to be made to fit the wearer's body precisely, ensuring that it provided maximum protection while also allowing for ease of movement. This made the process of crafting the armour a time-consuming and expensive one, requiring skilled craftsmen to create each piece by hand. Despite the expense, the Samnite muscle cuirass was a highly valued piece of equipment, particularly among the wealthier Samnite soldiers who could afford it. It provided a level of protection that was superior to other forms of armour, such as leather or cloth, and gave the wearer a sense of status and prestige on the battlefield. The armour was also a symbol of the Samnite culture, with the engraved muscle pattern serving as a reminder of their warrior heritage. However, not all Samnite soldiers had access to the muscle cuirass. The cost of producing the armour meant that only the wealthiest soldiers could afford it, leaving the majority of the Samnite infantry without this level of protection. Instead, they relied on simpler forms of armour, or none at all, making them more vulnerable to enemy attacks. Greek influence did not stop with the body armour. The Attic helmet was a type of helmet worn by the ancient Greeks, particularly the Athenians, during their military campaigns. It was made of bronze and consisted of a round top with cheek guards and a nose guard that protected the face. The helmet provided a high degree of protection to the wearer, particularly from head injuries caused by sword or axe strikes. The Samnites, who are known for their adaptability in battle, also adopted the Attic helmet as they preferred headgear during military campaigns. The helmet offered several advantages to the Samnite soldiers, including its light weight and ease of movement. Unlike other types of helmets, such as the Corinthian helmet, which covered the entire head and neck, the Attic helmet only covered the upper part of the face and head, making it easier to move the head and see in battle. Another advantage of the Attic helmet was its affordability. The helmet was relatively easy to produce and was less expensive than other types of helmets, making it accessible to a wider range of soldiers. This meant that even the poorest Samnite soldiers could afford to purchase an Attic helmet, giving them a degree of protection that they would not have had otherwise. Despite its advantages, the Attic helmet was not without its weaknesses. It offered limited protection to the neck and ears, leaving these areas vulnerable to enemy attacks. However, the Samnites were able to adapt their fighting style to compensate for this, using their agility and mobility to avoid these types of strikes. Overall, the Attic helmet was a valuable piece of equipment for the Samnite soldiers, providing them with a level of protection that was both affordable and effective. It was also a symbol of their adaptability and willingness to adopt new technologies and techniques to succeed in battle. Again, the Greek influence continues with greaves. Greaves were a type of armour worn on the legs by ancient Greek soldiers, consisting of metal plates that covered the shin and calf. They were typically made of bronze and were designed to protect the legs from sword and spear strikes, as well as from projectiles such as arrows and stones. The Samnites also used greaves as a form of leg protection, but they adapted the design to suit their unique fighting style. Instead of wearing greaves on both legs like the Greeks did, the Samnites only wore them on one leg, typically the left. This allowed for greater mobility and agility on the battlefield, as the unencumbered leg can be used for rapid movement and quick changes in direction. The Samnite greaves were also designed to be lightweight and affordable, making them accessible to a wider range of soldiers. They were typically made of iron rather than bronze, which was more expensive and difficult to obtain. The Samnite greaves were also simpler in design, lacking the intricate patterns and engravings found on Greek greaves. Despite all the Greek influence, there was one aspect of the Samnite Milites' armour that was uniquely their own: their famous bronze belts. The Samnite bronze belt was a significant piece of armour worn by the ancient Samnite warriors. It was a large belt made out of bronze that wrapped around the waist and hooked onto itself. The hooks were typically adorned with horse designs, which were considered sacred animals in Samnite culture. The Samnite bronze belt was more than just a piece of armour. It was a symbol of the Samnite warrior's identity and culture. It was an indication of wealth and social status, as only the wealthiest and most important members of Samnite society could afford to wear such a belt. It was also a symbol of the Samnite warrior's connection to horses, which were revered in Samnite culture as symbols of power and nobility. The Samnite bronze belt was an essential part of the Samnite warrior's attire, as it held together the rest of their armour, including their sword and scabbard. It was also a symbol of their readiness for battle, as it was only worn during times of war and when they were training. The Samnite Milites, being the wealthiest and most prestigious members of Samnite society, were able to afford the most advanced and expensive armour and weaponry. This included the Greek aspis, which was a large round shield used by Greek hoplites. The aspis was typically made of wood covered in bronze and was about 3 feet in diameter. It was designed to protect the soldier from head to knee and was held by a strap attached to the inside of the shield. The outer surface of the aspis was often adorned with decorative patterns or symbols, reflecting the city or region where it was made. The aspis was an essential piece of equipment for Greek hoplites, as it allowed them to form a phalanx, a tightly packed formation of soldiers with their shields interlocking to create a wall of protection. This formation was highly effective against enemy charges, as it could absorb the impact of a charge and then push back with the weight of the phalanx. The Samnite Milites, who could afford the aspis, recognised its effectiveness and adopted it for their use. However, they adapted the design to suit their fighting style. Instead of using the aspis to form a phalanx, the Samnite Milites used it in combination with their highly mobile tactics. They would use the shield to protect themselves during a charge, then quickly move out of the way to launch a counterattack. In terms of weaponry, universally, the Samnites' main weapon was the javelin. The javelin was the Samnites' primary weapon of choice, and it was well suited to their style of warfare. The Samnites were known for their hit-and-run tactics, in which they would charge at the enemy, hurl their javelins, and then quickly retreat before the enemy could counterattack. This allowed them to inflict damage on the enemy while minimising their losses. The Samnite javelin was typically about 6 feet long and made of wood with a sharp iron tip. It was lighter and more manoeuvrable than the spear used by Greek hoplites, making it easier for the Samnites to use in their hit-and-run tactics. Additionally, the Samnite javelin was designed to be thrown at a high angle, so that it would land with force and penetrate deep into the enemy's armour. The Samnites were skilled at using their javelins, and they would often hurl them in a shower, creating a rain of deadly missiles that could quickly overwhelm the enemy. The Samnites would also use their javelins to disrupt enemy formations, targeting key soldiers such as officers or archers. The Samnites' reliance on the javelin was not just a matter of preference or tradition, but was also due to practical considerations. The javelin was relatively cheap and easy to produce, making it accessible to all members of the Samnite army. This was important in a society where only the wealthiest members could afford the most advanced equipment. Additionally, the javelin's light weight and maneuverability made it well suited to the mountainous terrain of the Samnites' homeland, where mobility and agility were key to success in battle. In summary, the Samnite javelin was an effective weapon that was well suited to the Samnites' hit-and-run tactics and their mountainous terrain. It was also relatively cheap and easy to produce, making it accessible to all members of the Samnite army. For secondary weapons, Samnite Milites are often portrayed wielding the kopis. The Samnites are often portrayed in popular culture and media as wielding the kopis, a curved sword used by the ancient Greeks. However, there is limited evidence to support the notion that the Samnites used this weapon. It is more likely that this portrayal is a result of artistic license or a misinterpretation of historical sources. The kopis was a single-edged sword with a curved blade that widened towards the tip. It was designed to be used for hacking and chopping rather than thrusting like the straight-edged swords used by the Greeks. The kopis was a popular weapon among the Greeks, who used it in close combat and as a backup weapon to their spears. While there is evidence that the Samnites did use swords, there is little to suggest that they used the kopis specifically. The Samnites were more likely to have used straight-edged swords similar to those used by the Romans, rather than the curved kopis of the Greeks. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the portrayal of the Samnites wielding the kopis persists in popular culture. This may be due to the weapon's distinctive appearance and its association with the Greeks, who was seen as a symbol of martial prowess in the ancient world. The romanticised portrayal of the Samnites as fierce and barbaric warriors may have contributed to the adoption of the kopis as their weapon of choice in popular culture. Contrary to popular belief and artistic depictions, actual Samnite swords looked quite different from contemporary leaf-shaped swords. Rather than the curved, leaf-shaped blades commonly associated with ancient swords, Samnite swords were more akin to elongated spearheads. The typical Samnite sword had a straight, narrow blade with a pointed tip, similar in shape to a spearhead. The blade would be attached to a handle made of wood or bone, and the entire sword would be relatively short in length, typically around 60 to 70 centimeters. This design allowed for quick and precise thrusting attacks, making it an effective weapon in close combat. The reason for the distinct design of Samnite swords is likely due to their unique style of warfare. As a highly mobile force, the Samnites relied on speed and agility to outmaneuver their enemies on the battlefield. The straight-pointed blade of their swords was well suited to their style of fighting, allowing for quick and precise thrusting attacks that could be delivered with speed and accuracy. It is important to note that there were variations in the design of the Samnite swords, as well as other weapons used by the Samnites. The exact shape and size of the blade could vary depending on the region, the specific tribe, or the period. However, the overall shape and function of the Samnite sword were distinct from the more commonly known curved leaf-shaped swords used by other ancient cultures. In conclusion, the Samnite sword was a distinctive weapon that looked quite different from other contemporary swords. Rather than the curved leaf-shaped blades commonly depicted in popular culture, the Samnite sword was more like an elongated spearhead, with a straight pointed blade designed for quick and precise attacks. In battle, the Samnite Milites would often position themselves on high ground or in mountainous terrain where they could pelt their enemies with javelins from a safe distance. The omentums attached to their javelins allowed for a greater range and accuracy, making it difficult for their enemies to retaliate. Once their enemies were weakened by the javelin barrage, the Samnite Milites would then charge forward with their Hastati spears. In addition to their skill in open combat, the Samnite Milites were also known for their ability to raid and ambush enemies. They would use their knowledge of the terrain to launch surprise attacks on enemy camps or supply lines, often catching their enemies off guard. Overall, the Samnite Milites were a formidable force on the battlefield. Their ability to use both the javelin and the Hastati spear, along with their knowledge of terrain and ability to raid and ambush, made them a difficult enemy to defeat. Their unique fighting style played an important role in the Samnites' military success and was a symbol of their skill and prowess as warriors.
Thank you for watching and listening to our videos. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed, or if you really like the channel, consider supporting us on Patreon. There, for as little as $1 a month, you'll gain access to an ever-expanding variety of exclusive Ancient History Guide content not found anywhere else online. All donations go directly back into the channel, helping us on our campaign to conquer YouTube. All sources are listed and linked in the description below. I've been the Ancient History Guy, and as always, I'll be seeing you later.